Hey everybody, Caffeine Man here, and guess what time it is? It's Tea Talk time. What is Tea Talk time? Tea Talk time is going to be a 3-part series all about tea. In part 1, I'm going to discuss how much caffeine is in tea and how many teas there are. In part 2, I'm going to discuss all the health benefits of tea. And in part 3, I'm going to go over herbal teas. Herbal teas usually don't have any caffeine in them, so why is Caffeine Man going to be discussing them? Because a series on tea would not be complete without talking about herbal teas. They have just as many health benefits, if not more, than regular tea. And I feel that people should know all about those as well. Not only that, but there are a lot of people that are trying to wean themselves off of caffeine. What? I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Some people develop medical conditions, or their body just doesn't process caffeine the way it used to, and they need to reduce the amount of caffeine that they intake. And one way for coffee drinkers to do that is to switch to tea. There are some teas that actually taste similar to coffee, although I know it's not the same, but if you need to switch, it's something. And there are some people that drink regular tea that still need to cut down on their caffeine intake, and this video will go over which teas have less caffeine in them. So do you want to know how much caffeine is in tea and how many different kinds of tea there are? Well, it's all coming up right after this awesome intro. Hello again everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm excited to be starting my 3-part series on tea. Why a 3-part series on tea? Well, tea is an extremely large topic, and so far from my channel, I've been neglecting it severely. I focus on energy drinks, coffee, and lots of informative caffeine videos, but tea has been pushed to the side, and that's just not fair. So in order for tea not to be mad at me anymore, I'm going to be doing a 3-part series just for it. And you're not going to have to wait 3 weeks for it. Normally, I upload every Tuesday night, but who wants to wait 3 weeks to get 3 different videos on tea? And I know you're dying to watch all 3 parts, right? Therefore, I'll be releasing the video tonight, which is Tuesday, one on Thursday night, and one on Saturday night. All in time to get your tea fix all before Christmas. Christmas falls on a Tuesday this week, so I'm not going to have a Tuesday upload, but I'll be back the next week with another informative video on caffeine for you. So let's jump right into part 1, and I'm going to start off with a brief story of when I was in college to get us into this topic. Back then I thought there were 3 kinds of tea: black tea, green tea, and white tea, as shown in these pictures. But I'm going to pause the video right here. I'm pausing the video because I have a lot of different viewers out here. Many of my viewers will say, yeah, those are the 3 kinds of tea. Why are you pausing it? Then we have the other viewers who know a lot about tea, and they're saying, seriously? Does this guy know what he's talking about? And those are the tea connoisseurs who know a lot about tea, probably more than me. So, let me continue on. These pictures are a lie. They've been doctored in Photoshop for my own purposes to show how naive I was in college. The truth is, all tea comes from one basic plant, and that's the Camellia sinensis plant. The differences in tea all come down to how they're processed. And now the college me is in awe. There are over 3,000 varieties of tea in the world. All of those come from the same plant? Well, yeah, lots of that same plant. So are there just 3 kinds of tea? No. I had just entered college at the time, and I was used to having black tea because that's what was in my house. Because that's what my parents bought, because I didn't have to buy anything for myself at the time. The first time I had to go to the store for tea, I was smacked in the face with an entire aisle of tea. I had no idea what to do. I was so overwhelmed, I actually walked out of the store without buying anything. Seriously, true story. Why such a large aisle of so many teas? Well, tea is actually the 2nd most consumed beverage in the world, and it's coming in 2nd place to water. That's right, water. Tea is the most popular manufactured beverage in the world. If you combine coffee, milk, soft drinks, and alcohol all together, tea sells more than all of them combined. Therefore, that's why there's so many kinds out there. Everyone has their hand in this business because it's the 2nd most drank drink in the world. Drank drink? Can I say drank drink? Well, I did. With all these teas, they can be broken down into 6 main categories: black tea, dark tea, oolong tea, green tea, white tea, and yellow tea. As I said before, all the differences in these tea come from how they're processed. So let's talk about these processes briefly, and I hope not to drone on and on and on and bore you because it can be a little bit technical. And hopefully I can find ways to keep you awake. Jump cut. So let's start off with black teas. Black tea is allowed to wither, which precedes a process called oxidation. What is oxidation? My college self wonders. It's the process or result of oxidized or oxidation. What? Pfft. Thanks a lot, dictionary.com. Oxidized just means prolonged exposure to air. How'd I ever make it through college? During this process, water evaporates out of the leaf, and the leaf absorbs more oxygen through the air. Black teas usually undergo full oxidation, and the results are dark brown or black tea leaves. They have more robust and pronounced flavors than the lighter teas, and when brewed appropriately, have a higher caffeine content than lighter teas. Black teas usually have about 50 to 65% less caffeine than most coffees do. But there are other variables such as what kind of coffee, how the coffee is brewed. If you want to know more about that, I'm going to include a card above. I did a video on how the brewing method affects the caffeine count in coffee. Or it could just be easier for me to tell you that an 8-ounce cup of black tea has around 35 to 60 milligrams of caffeine in it, and it usually averages right around the 40 mark. Some black teas include English breakfast, Earl Grey, Irish breakfast, afternoon tea, masala chai, Assam, Nepal, Darling, Nilgiri, Rise, Kemoon, Ceylon, and do I have to list all the black teas? I just butchered like more than half of those. Okay, listen, there's a lot. So let's move on to dark tea. Now when we look at dark tea, I first have to talk about fermentation. The word fermentation is often used to describe oxidation, but in fact it's an entirely different process. True fermentation requires microbial activity. In tea, this is generally taken to mean any microbial activity, whether it occurs with or without oxygen present, which is why it's different from oxidation. Basically, when people talk tea, oxidation and fermentation sometimes get interchanged, making it a confusing topic. That being said, while oxidation will occur naturally in any plucked leaf, only a few types of tea are truly fermented, dark tea being one of them. In Western culture, you don't hear much about dark teas because they're not as popular, but they're slightly more popular in the Eastern culture. What about caffeine count? It has around the same amount of caffeine as black teas do, but it also depends on when the leaves were plucked. Caffeine content decreases if the leaf was plucked later in the season. Given the fact that most people don't know when the leaf was plucked, makes the point kind of moot. Next, we have oolong tea. Oolong tea is allowed to undergo partial oxidation. The degree of oxidation varies, ranging anywhere from 8% to 85%, depending on the variety and production style. These different styles can vary widely in flavor. The flavor of oolong teas normally aren't as robust as black teas, but not as subtle as green teas. It has its own extremely fragrant and intriguing tones. They can be sweet and fruity with honey aromas, or woody and thick with roasted aromas. The caffeine content in oolong tea usually ranges anywhere between green tea and black tea. A lightly oxidized oolong tea will have lower caffeine levels, similar to a green tea, while a higher oxidized oolong tea will have higher caffeine content, similar to a black tea. But all of that varies based on how the tea is processed and how it was cultivated. Generally speaking, an 8-ounce cup averages between 30 and 50 milligrams of caffeine. Next, we move on to the most popular tea, and that's green tea. Green tea is only allowed to wither slightly after it's plucked. Then, the oxidation process is stopped by rapidly heating the leaves. This stops them from becoming dark or black and retaining its green color. Green teas tend to produce a more subtle flavor with many undertones and accents that tea connoisseurs love. How about caffeine? Similar to the rest, it can vary a bit, but in general, it comes in between 25 and 40 milligrams. Now, some green teas have been known to have slightly less than 20 milligrams, and some have been known to have slightly higher than 50 milligrams, so it's always good to check the package. But generally speaking, they'll always come in lower than the black and dark teas. And 25 to 40 milligrams seems to be an accurate average. What are a few kinds of green tea? Sencha is the most common green tea in Japan. It's grown in direct sunlight and tends to be harvested in the first or second flush of leaves. Flush refers to what tea season the leaves were plucked in. First flush is the very first plucking of a tea plant's harvest season. Second flush is the second time, and so forth. Gyokuro. The process for Gyokuro green tea is similar to Sencha, except that about 3 weeks prior to harvest, the tea leaves are hidden from sunlight. When removed from sunlight, the leaves endure less photosynthesis, keeping strong flavored amino acids in the plant and giving Gyokuro a fuller flavor. Tencha. Tencha is made similarly to Gyokuro. It's removed from sunlight 3 weeks prior to harvest, and then, after harvest, the leaves are steamed, air-dried, and removed of vines and stems. The major difference between Tencha and Gyokuro is that after it's harvested and cultivated, the Tencha does not go through the rolling process. Matcha green tea. Matcha green tea is just ground up Tencha. After the shading, harvesting, and steaming, the leaves are then air-dried, removed of stems and veins, and then ground up into a powder to be brewed. Matcha is known to be one of the stronger green teas because of its powdered form. Shincha. Shincha differs from the other teas because you typically find the year of harvest on it. Shincha is essentially a first harvest tea, meaning that the leaves are the best quality and the most expensive. It normally has a bitter taste due to all the amino acids that it has and the lack of catechin and caffeine. Bancha. Bancha is a second harvest tea. After the first flush has been taken from Shincha, then regrown. Bancha leaves tend to be picked in 3 periods, varying between June and October, with the tea leaves becoming less desirable in each harvest. Dragonwell. Dragonwell is one of the most popular teas in China. It uses a pan-frying process, which gives the tea an inviting, toasty aroma. Dragonwell tea also has a sweet, rounded flavor, as well as a full, nutty and buttery texture and dry finish. There are plenty of other green teas as well, but that's just a basic list based on the varying degrees of how they're processed. Next on the list is white tea. White tea is one of the most delicate of the teas. It's appreciated for its subtlety, complexity, and natural sweetness. See what I did with the teas there? White teas are hand processed, using the youngest shoots of the tea plant with no oxidation. When brewed correctly, with a very low temperature and short steeping time, white teas can produce a low amount of caffeine. White tea is known to be a delicate tea because it is so minimally processed. White tea is harvested before the tea plant's leaves open fully, when the young buds are still covered with a fine white hair, hence the name white tea. Most white teas are still hand-picked and hand-processed, making them a true delicacy to sip in appreciation of the artisanship that went into their making. Some common traits of white tea include floral flavors, as well as grassy flavors, honey, fruity, melon, peach, and many others that make it delicate and sweet. So, how about caffeine? Well, being the delicate flower that it is, plant, it comes in at the lower end of the spectrum between 15 and 25 milligrams of caffeine. The 6th and final category of tea is yellow tea. Yellow tea is a rare category of tea that's similar to green tea in appearance and flavor, but typically doesn't have the grassiness of some green teas. Yellow teas typically go through more oxidation than green teas, and a longer, slower drying period. And all yellow teas come from China. And there you have it, the 6 categories of tea. Now, although this might have seemed like it was a lot of information, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot more to discuss, and in part 2, I'm going to go over all the health benefits of all those teas. Part 2 will actually be fairly longer than this video. I hope by not too much, but it's because it's got a lot of useful information, and I highly encourage you to watch it. Also, if you want to stay informed on all things caffeine related, feel free to hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a like and let your friends know by sharing it on your social media. Thanks for watching, and see you in part 2.